Everybody, this is Dream, and we've got a big 10-game slate here for the NBA on both DraftKings and FanDuel. We'll start off with DraftKings, but let's get into the injury report first. Before I do that, though, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? It really does help the channel a lot. Really do appreciate it. So let's get into the long injury report today. We're going to start with the Wizards here. Let's see here. We got Porzingis and Barton are both questionable. Beal, Wright, and Hachimura are all out. Obviously, with those guys out, that's going to benefit a lot of guys. And this is also this questionable tags on these players going to help, really going to shape potential usage today. Pacers, we have Turner questionable, Jackson questionable, and Duarte out. If those two guys are out, that's definitely going to open up some value options on the slate. Then for the Raptors, we have Achua and Porter out. For the Magic, we have Carter, Suggs, Harris, and Okiki out. For the Knicks, Toppin is out. For the Hornets, Ball, Hayward, and Smith Jr. are out. For the Kings, Fox and Terrence Davis are both questionable. For the Cavs, Love, Wade are both out, and then Donovan Mitchell is questionable. For the Hawks, Hunter is questionable. Murray and Collins are both out. For the Lakers, LeBron, Davis are both probable, and Gabriel's out. For the 76ers, Maxey remains out. For the Pistons, Cunningham is out, and Livers is doubtful. For the Grizzlies, Adams is questionable, and Bane is out. For the Suns, Cam Johnson is out. For the Pelicans, Ingram and Jones are both out. For the Timberwolves, Towns is continuing to be out. For the Jazz, Markkanen, Clarkson, and Conley are all questionable, and Sexton is out. So we got a lot of questionable tags today. That's definitely going to take into consideration as we build lineups tonight. A lot of information that we're going to have to get, closer to the slate. But right now, I got some players that I do think are going to be good today. Let's go and get into those. First, I got three guys on the slate here. Kelly Oubre Jr. Now, I don't typically love him because he can be streaky, but he's been playing really well with all the guys out for the Hornets, and so I look for that to continue here. And his price hasn't really popped up all that much. It's popped up a little bit, but not enough to be too concerned on this particular slate in the plus matchup for himself. Then we have Denny Avdija. Now, his price point has popped up some, but with all the injuries to the Wizards, he's back as a starter playing 25 to 35 minutes and having a pretty decent amount of usage and stuff like that. So I do think he's a decent play on the slate. And then also Mitchell Robinson for the Knicks. He's just been playing pretty well since he came back from injury. He had one bad game. Obviously, the Knicks kind of be crazy when it comes to minutes sometimes, but with Toppin out, he's definitely going to get more opportunity in this particular game, and I think he's a viable option on this a good slate here. So let's get other players I do like here. We're going to look at Jalen Brunson for the Knicks. Now, he's been pretty solid. He's had a couple off games lately, but he has been solid most of the season, and he has a lot of upside, especially considering that he's one of the few guys on the Knicks to typically get a full complement of minutes. Now, obviously, if we look at the last 5 games, that's not been the case. So it is a little bit of concern because, honestly, they only have one guy out, which is kind of unusual for them. So he is a little bit risky. I was going to put him as a main play, but because of the minute situation, I couldn't. Then we'll look at Monte Morris. He's really been playing well with Beal out, and I look for him to continue that today. His price point is still pretty fair for what he can do, and even though he is a little bit streaky at times, he should have plenty of minutes today and have a full complement of shot attempts. Then we'll look at Buddy Hield for the Indiana Pacers. He seems like he's finally starting to play good again. He had a few rough games there a week or so ago, but now that his minutes are locked in at max, he's been scoring well, and his price is actually kind of cheap today for what he's been doing. Then we'll also look at Tyrese Halliburton for Indiana. He should be back and going strong here in this game. Last game he played, he did really solid, and I expect that to continue here. He's just been pretty much all offense for their team, and I look for that to continue in this matchup. And then James Harden. Now, he's a little bit of a wild card today because he's just a little bit too cheap for what he typically does. Obviously, he typically stays over, around 9,500 or above, but he's only $8,900 today, and he should get 35 to 40 minutes in this game. Now, obviously, we do want to make sure that he's good to go, but because this will be the second game he's played in a month. But against the Lakers, who are not very good. He should have plenty of opportunity here. So the price point makes him viable, but he's still somebody to take consider. But he's still a little bit risky as a result of the situation. Then we'll look at Julius Randle here for the Knicks. He's been playing pretty well lately. He's had some off games though, but he's been good most of the season, and his price point has come down some, which is what I like as well. I like him anytime he's under $8,000. He's somebody I take a look at, especially in the plus matchup like he's got here against Charlotte. Then we'll look at PJ Washington. Now he's obviously a guy that's very streaky, but he's been playing extremely well the last few games with some of the guys injured. And so I look for that to continue here, and his price is actually still pretty fair for what he's been doing. He does have 45-point upside in this matchup. Then we'll look at Terry Rozier for the Charlotte as well. He's been playing extremely well too. Now he does have 50 fantasy point upside. With all the injuries to guards and stuff, he's been getting more minutes. And here on DraftKings, for some reason, he has small forward potential. So typically, I don't really see him as a small forward, but hey, DraftKings is going to give us that opportunity to put him in that forward position if we want. Then Braden Clark for Memphis. Now he's really kind of depending on if he ends up potentially starting today, especially if Adams is out. So do keep that in mind. But he does look like he's been playing more minutes the last few games, and so I look for that to potentially continue. His price is just too cheap for his potential, especially considering the fact that he can be a double-double machine when he gets the minutes. Then we'll look at Mitchell Robinson. Oh, sorry, I already looked at Robinson. We'll look at Mason Plumlee for the Hornets. He's been playing pretty well lately. He's pretty consistent as a player in general. His price has popped up a little bit due to his play because it had dropped down some, but I still think he's a viable option on the slate, especially a plus matchup. And then Kelly Olynyk. Now he's a little bit of a wild card today because we don't know exactly if there's going to be an injury situation with the Jazz yet, but if some of those guys end up being out, then definitely take a look at him. So that's what I have for DraftKings. Let's go and get over into FanDuel. Now you're going to notice that a lot of the players don't really overlap today, which is a little bit unusual for some of these slates. But the pricing on both slate sites are somewhat different today, so that definitely plays into it. But there are some overlap as well. Monte Morris here for the Wizards. Now, he's not as cheap over here as I like him to be, but with Beal out and a couple other guys out, he has some upside in this matchup, and I do look for him to have a pretty good game against Indiana, who's one of the weaker defensive teams overall. Terry Rozier is another guy I like here for Charlotte. He's been playing extremely well, and especially with injuries there, and his price point is pretty solid for this particular slate here. And then Trae Young, now he hasn't been playing particularly well lately, but his price point's pretty good here, and we have a couple injuries to the team, so I expect him to get more usage as if he needs it. But do be aware that he's got some team turmoil stuff going on, so he is kind of a wild card today. Then we'll look at Kelly Oubre, who typically is a very streaky player, but he's been playing pretty well lately, though his price has popped up a lot here on FanDuel, so I don't love him. But he's still viable on the slate regardless. This is a nice matchup for him. D'Angelo Russell. I do like him today, and he's actually pretty good priced, I think, for what his potential is here. With Towns out, he's been getting more opportunity, and he's been a little bit safer floor than he usually has. And so I do like that, and so he's definitely somebody I'm taking into consideration here. Then Dylan Brooks from Memphis. Now he's been up and down even lately, but he still has pretty good upside, especially with Bane remaining out. He has more upside as a result, and he's been getting a little bit more usage. Then we'll look at Kyle Kuzma. Now he's been very streaky lately, but he has some good upside with all the injuries here. And his prices are a little bit better here on FanDuel than it is on DraftKings, so I do think he's viable here. And he has 45 to 50 fantasy point upside in this matchup against Indiana, especially if Indiana ends up having some guys out. Then we'll look at Kevin Durant. Now he's been playing pretty well last 5 or 6 games, and that's what we like to find from Kevin is when he's playing really good, we want to try to roster him. And he's been scoring a decent chunk amount of points, and he's getting a lot of peripheral stats as well. So he definitely has a good upside in this matchup here against Atlanta. Then we'll look at PJ Washington, who's very streaky, but he has a good upside, especially the way he's been playing last few games with all the injuries to the Hornets, and so I look for that to continue here. Then Julius Randle, he's a guy I like quite a bit today for the Knicks. He's got a nice plus matchup here, and even though he has been a little bit streaky lately, he has good upside, and his price is a little bit too cheap for what his potential is. And then we look at Kelly Olynyk for the Utah Jazz. He's been playing pretty solid so far this season, and I expect that to continue in this matchup, especially with some of the guys potentially injured at his position. Then for centers, we're going to look at Mason Plumlee first for the Hornets. He's just been pretty consistent most of the season. His price point is okay here, and he has upside in the mid-30s, so I do think he's a viable option on the slate. Clint Capella is also interesting today, considering the fact that they've got a lot of injuries to the Hawks, and he should get plenty of minutes and usage here. But he does tend to be a little bit streaky in the minutes department anyway, so do keep that in mind. But his price point is pretty good here on FanDuel. And then finally, last but not least, Mitchell Robinson for the Knicks. He's been playing pretty solid. Now, his price point is not as good here on FanDuel as it is on DraftKings, but he does have upside in this matchup, and so I do think he's a viable choice, somebody to look at here. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Going to be a very interesting slate. Lots of injuries today. Obviously, we're going to have to find out about the injury stuff, as the day progresses. Make sure to check the link in the description for link to Discord so you can get up-to-date information and stuff like that on injuries. And have a nice day, guys.